Hello, welcome to your academy. At your academy today, we would be dealing with feminism, our feminist literary theory. Feminism is one of the most complicated theories to discuss. It has got its own fair share of controversies. We could say that feminism is one of the most celebrated, controversial, accepted, despised, eulogized, discussed, debated, and applied domestic, political, and literary movement as well as a theory. So, a theory which has got so many facets and aspects, it would be very difficult task to explain or introduce a movement or a theory like this. Secondly, feminism is as old as Marxism or as complicated as Marxism. And I made a statement rather in introduction to Marxism that Marxism is also a very complicated theory, and the reason I gave there was that it's a very long-lived theory and has seen lot of changes and developments throughout. Many new writers came in, wrote about the theory. Same is the case with feminism, and the strange case with feminism and Marxism would be that both these theories began almost at the same time. Feminism also began somewhere in 1848 and has continued till date. And in past 150 or 160 years or 170, 80 years, that you can count them if you want to be very exact about the number of years, they have gone through various stages, various movements, and with respect to feminism through many waves. And down these years, feminism has grew into a variety of kinds. Like we have neo-Marxist feminism, like we have Marxist feminism, we have psychoanalytic feminism, we have eco-feminism, and we have various waves of feminism, like first wave of feminism, second wave of feminism, third wave of feminism. Now we have fourth wave of feminism. Now, considering all these things, feminism is or would be a complicated theory to discuss or introduce. But no worries, at your academy we know the art of making complex things look simple, and we'll make efforts to make feminism also a simple theory to understand. Now, how do we start, or from where do we start? Now, the best way to start the introduction to feminism would be, why did feminism come to the existence at first place? Now, that would be the most important question that we need to answer. Why did world need feminism? And what did feminism in return do? Now, let's go through the context of this feminism and look at the history that preceded these movements. Now, we'll take into the consideration Europe or West for that matter, because feminism is a movement which began in West, dominated in West, lived in West, and provided results in West. But then feminism was not perhaps the need only for the West. So why was there the need of feminism? The need of feminism, the answer to this question would be in just one sentence, and that would be, woman has always been treated in almost all the civilization as second-grade human being. That is why there was a great difference or gulf between the rights of man and the rights of woman. That led to a system that we called patriarchal or male dominant. So most of the societies, most of the human societies or human civilizations were male dominant. To cite the examples of few, I would give references or examples of 3-4 civilizations which were great and which are still living. For example, the Greek civilization, for example, the Arab civilization, for example, the Western civilization and the Indian civilization. And we will see the condition and the status of women in these societies prior to this movement called feminism came. Now, if you go back to the Greek civilization, you will find that even in Greek civilization, which was the most learned civilization, an advanced civilization of its times, and you will find great philosophers, great writers, great poets coming from this Greek civilization. But strangely, you will not find a single feminist scholar from, rather a female scholar from, Greek. And there must have been a good reason for this. And the reason was women in Greek civilization weren't given the rights like right to education, like other rights. Rather, even the great, writers from Greek, they would create a fictional character of Pandora and, create a great, phrase called Pandora's box. Which is a box of miseries, which is a box of diseases, which is a box of problems. And woman in Greek civilization was considered to be, to be a box of problems, to be a box of miseries, to be a box of diseases. That was the status of hers. And if you come down bit and switch to Arab civilization prior to the Islamic revolution, you will find that Arabs would bury their female child in their infancy, or the moment they were born. And that was one of the most common practice that these Arabs had. They thought that the birth of a girl child in a family brought nothing but shame. And this is how they would treat females. However, that system was changed after Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, came onto the scene, and many of the contemporary feminists consider Prophet Muhammad to be the first feminist who gave rights to the females some 1500 years back. Now, that was the situation of women in Arab society. Now, if you come to the Indian society, we know in Indian society there was a tradition or a custom or a ritual called sati, wherein a female had to die along with her deceased husband. It would have been very unfortunate for a woman in India that her husband dies before her death. And if it happened, then she was supposed to be, cremated along with her husband. And this system, this sati system, continued as late as 20th and late 19th and early 20th century, only to be aborted when Britishers came to India and when East India Company settled here, and they passed few, acts and made this act of sati and a criminal act, and it was later also incorporated into the Indian Constitution. But this shows the status of women in a society, in Indian society. And then if we go to the Western civilization, to the Western society prior to 1848 and even in post 1848, we will find that females in West also did not enjoy great rights. They weren't having right to education, they weren't having right to vote, they weren't having right to property, they were right to writing, they were restricted to the four walls, wherein their duty was of a homemaker and of producing children. And in West, even the Western males didn't take great care of the female world. Like as I said earlier, when it came to India, our Indian sati system, it were the Britishers through East India Company who tried to eradicate this social evil from the society. They were in some cases, in certain ways, concerned about Indian women for that matter, but they did not start any such movement in West. Now, since in West no such movement was started by males to provide rights to the females, it became a necessity in West, particularly for the Western females, to launch a movement for their own rights. And this movement, which was exclusively started by the females for their own rights, was called as feminism. Now, this context gives us answer why did we need feminism at the first place? Or why did West needed feminism at the first place? They needed it because the patriarchal society, the male dominance, didn't find sufficient reasons or causes to raise a movement which could support the rights of the females. So it was then left to them, that is females, to raise voice for themselves. And it all started in 1848 at the Seneca Falls Movement, where some 300 men and women gathered and signed a declaration for the rights of women. And since then, since 1848, we have had 4 different waves of feminism. And these 4 different waves of feminism have been led by different personalities, and all these waves have had different issues, and some of these waves were successful, some of these waves were not that successful. For example, the first wave feminism was successful at the issues that it raised. Second wave feminism was not that much successful in all the causes that it raised. Third wave feminism was absolutely off track kind of a movement, which you can say, considering the feminist canons or the canons of feminism, and the failures of the second wave feminism would give rise to third wave feminism, and then I don't know the word failure would be perfect here, but if I'm not finding a perfect synonym for this, a third wave feminism would give rise to the fourth wave feminism. So, after understanding why was the feminism required for the first place, the next important thing that you need to understand is that what were the general causes of feminism, or general issues of feminism. Now here, when I am talking about these issues, I am surely not talking about the inherent issues of various waves, but feminism in general. So one of the most important aspect of this feminism was to deconstruct the patriarchal society, or to deconstruct the patriarchal notions from human society, and the other was to change the gender roles that male dominant society had incorporated in our societies, and change the perception regarding females or women, the way they were seen through the lens of a male or man. Now these were the 2 important challenges that feminism had, are 2 important fundamentals that feminism had, and most of the movements would go through these, or go to deconstruct, decentralize all these things. And they did it not with one stroke, because it was very difficult. The patriarchal society was there perhaps on the face of earth since man set foot on earth. So it would have been very difficult for a movement to eradicate all the evils pertaining to women, pertaining to female in one stroke. So there were different waves, there were different movements, there were different times which selected certain issues and tried to deliver upon those issues, and they are called as different waves of feminism. Now in the next section we will discuss all these sections, all these waves rather, one by one. How did these waves started? What were their main issues, and what were the results that they produced?